A very good evening to you. You're live here on GHOne TV. This is News Tonight with me, Natalie, for a look at our top stories. Coming up this evening, court dismisses NDC application to stop EC from recollation and redeclaration of 5 constituencies that their parliamentary candidates had earlier been declared winners. Meanwhile, Ghana Police Service has assured EC of adequate security for recollation of disputed parliamentary results following High Court order. And ahead in business, Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin adjourns sitting to January 2, 2024 over absence of Finance Minister to present mini budget 2025.
To adjourn the sittings of this meeting till the 2nd of January 2025.
And on the foreign front, 40 million face hunger in West and Central Africa, according to UN reports. Well, do stay with us here on News Tonight for the details of these stories and much more news. We bring you the details now here on News Tonight on GHOne TV. As always, you can watch this bulletin all across the world on Facebook and X at GHOne TV. Well, let's get started with health, as the minority in Parliament has raised alarm over the recent cholera outbreak in some parts of the country. According to the NDC MPs, the outbreak recorded in the Greater Accra, Central and Western regions is likely to become a national pandemic if immediate measures are not rolled out. Addressing the media, minority spokesperson on health, Kwabena Minta Akando, revealed that 123 cases and 15 deaths were recorded in the Western region on December 17, 2024, with 15 health workers being infected while caring for patients. The Dramboso MP charged the government to take action before it's too late.
Several regions across the country, the alarming rates of death linked to cholera infection clearly point to the broader neglect of Ghana's health sector. Poor working conditions for healthcare workers have led to the high attrition rates, while a lack of essential medical consumables have hampered the treatment of admitted patients. On November 28, the World Health Organization donated critical life-saving logistics to Ghana to support the management of cholera outbreak. Unfortunately, inefficiencies in the distribution of these vital resources have created significant bottlenecks, undermining effective case management in the outbreak zones. Many health facilities have been pushed to the brink, with administrators now resorting to appeals for assistance from corporate organizations and individual philanthropists to secure essential supplies such as fluids and bedding for critically ill patients. This dire situation clearly shows the administration's failure to adequately prepare for and respond to public health emergencies. The situation is worsening. According to WHO, over 2,039 cholera cases were recorded in November 2024 alone. If the current trend persists, the number will rise even higher. The daily situational report on cholera are deeply alarming. For instance, in the Western region, on December 17th, just 3 days ago, 123 cases and 15 deaths were recorded in a single day. Disturbingly, healthcare workers are also falling victim to the outbreak, with 15 healthcare workers infected while caring for patients in the region. Without immediate and decisive interventions, Ghana risks facing a full-blown cholera epidemic before the incoming administration takes over from the outgoing MPP regime. It is deeply concerning that what could have been a minor cholera outbreak has instead exposed the fragility of our healthcare system. This outbreak, which should have been controlled weeks ago, continues to escalate due to the systemic neglect and inefficiency. The minority urges government to act swiftly and decisively to address these challenges by ensuring resources are adequately allocated and healthcare workers are provided with the support they need to contain the outbreak. It is important to deepen public education.
Well, let's stay on this development. Our Western Regional correspondent, Kobina Amwa, joins now with the details from the region. Kobina, it's good to have you. Now, first of all, give us a general overview of how dire the situation is or has the potential of getting.
Okay, and as of today, 20th of August, December 2024, I could tell that as the numbers were actually alarming in early days that the cholera was outbreak in the Western region. Today, as at the 18th of December, the new cases recorded were 76. 76 new cases were recorded in the region. However, as people were alarmingly rushed to various health facilities, that number has actually reduced since they announced the cholera vaccination exercise was started on Sunday, December 15th. As at yesterday, according to the Regional Disease Control Officer, Nicholas Atimako, out of a target population of 641,851, they've been able to vaccinate a total number of 556,366, representing 88.2%. And so they've actually done a huge number of the vaccination exercise. Aside that, also, there was a ban on the sale of vegetables, especially by food vendors, and so the waxy food seller selling salad and the noodle seller, they were all asked to stop, and so that is also in session, and that had a rippling effect on even market traders who are selling these whole vegetables themselves. People were not buying from them because they felt that they could also contract the disease from that, and so at some point in time, even these market women were complaining that they are suffering low sales because of the ban. And so from there also, the WRCC has gone on to do some training and sensitization exercise for sellers of these salads and all that, asking them to do adapt proper hygienic standards when preparing their food. Although this ban is still in session, yesterday when I spoke to the Regional Environmental Health Officer, Mr. Oliver Cromwell, he maintained that the ban may be lifted dependent on the adherence contingency. And so if the adherence goes on for a long while and we begin to report reduced numbers in the cholera cases, then they may be able to lift the ban on the sale of vegetables. And so the ban on the sale of vegetables is still in session. And also, I think the public is currently now informed, and so many people are even avoiding eating outside. Many people are avoiding buying food outside. When they are going to buy it, they're dependent on if the food is actually warm or hot before they buy it. And people are avoiding these foods that would on a normal day contain these leaves and all that. And so people are actually very prioritizing their health in the wake of the festive season, as well as, it comes with a lot of exuberance and activities. People wouldn't want to be caught in this situation where they turn ill because of what they consume. And so this is the current situation in the Western region, as everybody is actually seems to adhere to the regulations being put in place. And also, there are some market disinfection and toilet disinfections. As we know, the cholera is a fecal oral disease, and so most of these diseases may have been contracted from fecal matter entering people's foods. And so all of these things are being done in the region to ensure that we report low numbers in the cholera cases, even as we enter the festive season.
Kobna Amwa, thank you so much for that detailed update from the Western region. That's our Western regional correspondent. We'll certainly engage subsequently and see how it rolls out in the days ahead. Thank you. You're watching News Tonight, and some other news this evening. The High Court in Accra has dismissed the National Democratic Congress NDC's application against the Electoral Commission over the recollation of 5 constituencies that their parliamentary candidates had earlier been declared winners. The court, presided over by Justice Joseph Owusu Edu Ajibine, says the disputed results have been deemed to be fraudulent and that the court cannot be invited to endorse such a fraudulent act. EIB's legal affairs correspondent Murtala Inusa has more in this report.
Now the battle lines have been drawn, and the EC's decision to seek recollation in some of the constituencies and redeclaration has been affirmed by the High Court in Accra after the court presided over by Justice Joseph Edu Owusu Ajibine held that a mandamus application filed by the 5 parliamentary candidates of the New Patriotic Party urging the court to compel the Electoral Commission to collate and declare the result of some of the disputed areas have been affirmed. The court said in relation to Suhu in Sawamba Drejiri, Ablikuma North, Ablikuma Central, Tema Central, and of course Techima North, all of them, the court has made an order compelling the Electoral Commission to recollate and declare those results. The court has also ordered the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, to provide adequate security to ensure that the collation centers are safe for the EC or officials to collate and declare those results. Again, the NDC, the National Democratic Congress application seeking to stop the Electoral Commission from recollating and declaring especially results in some of the constituencies that had already been declared had been thrown out. The court said that particular areas had been declared by the EC as having issues with legality, and so the court cannot be called upon to affirm results or collation of results that has been deemed to be fraud. Counsel for the NDC, ADG Tamaklo, had this reaction moment after the court decision.
How is Jane Mensah going to deny her own letter in response to the minority? But that notwithstanding, the judge says, without any contrary evidence from the EC or a deposition by the returning officers in their respective places, that the declaration that they made was fraudulent. But the judge said it was fraudulent. Where he got the evidence of fraud, I don't know. Somebody must come to court, put a rival evidence of fraud before you or duress and prove it. The EC only came and said on point of law. In fact, the Electoral Commission's own lawyer never talked about the videos. But the court said those elections are tainted with fraud. How he came to the conclusion that there was fraud, I don't know.
But what is the reaction of Frank Anodompre, one of the candidates whose request had been granted for recollation and declaration?
Well, I think the court did its job. I anticipated it and it happened. So glory be to God. But it's not done yet. We are going for the collation and declaration. Which
you are certain that?
Yes, of course. We also have done our work. Internally, we have collated the results that we know we won. That's why we're patient. So we are just waiting for the processes to begin. We pray that they do it as soon as possible. I can't wait to be in Parliament.
From the NDC side, it be bright for Tema Central and Baba Sadiq have this message for the people.
What is sure is that from day one, it wasn't ever going to be easy, and I've always fought through it. So I still stand resolute in my quest to represent the people of Tema Central. I'm glad that on this occasion they have partnered me in that quest and have voted for me. And so, as I've promised them always, I will always remain your soldier, I will always remain your leader, and I will stand and fight till we exhaust every possibility to protect your verdict on my behalf.
I've always been confident that any process would confirm or affirm the fact that we duly won the Kaiku Central constituency. We have been very confident from the start, from the get-go, regarding the fact that we won and the fact that we have all the necessary documentation to back it.
Clearly, the decision of the court is that the EC should proceed to collate and also declare the disputed areas. From the High Court in Accra, Natalie Inusa, GHOne.
That's our legal affairs correspondent, Natalie Inusa, joining there. And he is in studio, in fact, to run us through the details some more. And however, there is also, we understand, some breaking news as it pertains to this development. The NDC has taken yet another legal action. Natalie, run us through this update.
Absolutely. Natalie, as you heard clearly from what transpired in court today, in fact, it was a battle of words. The parties exclusively made sure that they were making the court to catch their attention. Two separate cases came to court. The NPP side came with a mandamus application asking the court to compel the EC to go and recollate or to collate and declare those results. The court granted that wish. However, the NDC's leg, which was initially also seeking to say that let the decisions or the declarations made by the EC earlier, let it remain. The EC should be asked not to do a recollation. Now there's an update. After the court has dismissed the NDC side, now they've moved to another step further. And this time around, they've moved to the Supreme Court. Few hours after the orders of the court. And what they are asking the court from the Supreme Court is an order for certiorari. And that is seeking to quash the decision or the orders made by the High Court. And two orders were made by the High Court today. The first was for the EC to collate and declare, irrespective of those constituencies that have earlier been declared that the NDC feel that their candidates have emerged winners. The second one was to the IGP to provide adequate security to all the collation centers where these collations will be taking place. And the NDC is saying that no, there's an issue that will only allow the orders of the High Court to remain. So we are seeking a stay of execution at the High Court. And they have been stating some interesting grounds
for this
to back this very application that they have filed. And they state that the first ground that they came up with is the effect that the impugned order of the High Court were made in breach of the applicant's right to be heard, and that's of the Inspector General of Police. And then the second one was that it is apparent bias and partiality on the part of the judge. They're accusing the judge of being biased. The third one is that the High Court committed a non-jurisdictional error of law by failing to exercise the powers under Order 55 Rule 5 of CI 47 to direct the second and the sixth interested parties, and then the second is the EC and the sixth interested party to serve the mandamus, that is the IGP applicant, on the applicant who have interested in the subject matter. And then the final one is that error of law apparent on the face of the record. And they think that these things were clear on the face of the orders that were made by the courts, and if that is allowed to hold on, then it means we are heading somewhere. And for them, they think that the Supreme Court supervisory jurisdiction on the High Court should be invoked. And that was filed a few hours ago. Absolutely.
So
before
it was just a few hours after
the decision of the court
was dismissed.
Absolutely.
What are the implications, just looking ahead, of this likely to be? How do you foresee it playing out?
So what is clear now, it is interesting because we just have Christmas coming.
Yes.
The only official working day before the Supreme Court, the High Court, or the Superior Court goes on a break is on Monday. And today, they are filing this, and understand that the return date will be somewhere in January. So if the EC decide that tomorrow we are resuming collation or recollation, what then is the effect of it? But it's an interesting application that has been filed, and we will know the consequences of this in the coming days.
We certainly will. Natalie Inusa, thank you so much. Our legal affairs correspondent running us through that. Certainly, as he mentioned, more on that subsequently right here on GH1 TV. In some other stories this evening, President-elect John Dramani Mahama has again expressed concern over the conduct of the Electoral Commission in addressing the disputed parliamentary results in some 5 constituencies after the December 7 elections. Now, this comes after an Accra High Court dismissed an application by the National Democratic Congress (NDC) to stop the Commission from recollation and redeclaration of the disputed election results. Speaking during a courtesy call paid on him by the NDC Professionals Forum in Accra, President-elect Mahama stated that the EC must be consistent with its mandates and not change the rules as and when it suits them.
There are few outstanding issues arising from the election. As you are aware, 9 constituencies are in dispute, and we think that the Electoral Commission should act in a principled manner. You cannot change the rules when it suits you and apply different rules when different circumstances exist. There was a particular case in 2020, and the Electoral Commission came out clearly that if a declaration had been made, it was not the duty of the Electoral Commission to adjudicate it. The courts were the right place to go. And so if a declaration has been made, it doesn't matter under what circumstance. They are saying that somewhere under duress. In the case of Techiman South, it was under duress. There were soldiers in the collation room. There was chaos in the collation room when the declaration was made. And the same arguments were passed that, there should be a recollation. And the Electoral Commission said, no, there can't be any recollation once a declaration has been made. In the same circumstances, declarations have been made. If people have a grievance, they must go to the courts and redress those grievances there. We don't think that the goalpost should be shifted depending on who is at the other end of the stick. There's one particular case in which there was no declaration. We can understand that. And so the Electoral Commission has to make a determination what happens. Is there going to be a rerun? How are they going to be able to collate those results? And so we think that there must be fairness and justice in everything that we do.
Now, the National Election Security Task Force has prohibited all unauthorized individuals from accessing the recollation centers designated for disputed constituencies. During a media briefing on Friday, December 20, the Director of Police Public Affairs, ACP Grace Ansa Akrofi, announced that joint military and police personnel would oversee the exercise. She urged political parties, particularly their supporters, to refrain from gathering en masse at the coalition centers to ensure a smooth and secure process.
The National Election Security Task Force and the Electoral Commission on 9th December 2024 held a meeting at the National Police Headquarters, Accra, to discuss issues pertaining to the outstanding collations in some constituencies. The Electoral Commission informed the task force of their preparedness to proceed with the outstanding collations and requested the task force to provide the needed security. The task force assured the Electoral Commission of its readiness to provide the needed security for the outstanding collations. In addition, the Commission reminded the task force that only individuals accredited by the Commission should be allowed access to the collation centers. In this regard, there will be a joint police and military deployment for the exercise. We wish to caution the public that non-accredited persons will not be permitted at the centers. Also, the task force would like to urge the political parties to refrain from inciting their supporters to mass up at the collation centers to disrupt the process. We wish to state that throughout the election period, including this post-election phase, the National Election Security Task Force has put Ghana first. We have put the peace and security of the country first, and we will continue to do so. We therefore invite the good people of our beloved country, including all stakeholders, to work with us in this endeavor.
Well, meanwhile, the National Democratic Congress NDC in the northern region is challenging the outcome of parliamentary results in some constituencies, citing issues of overvoting and violations of electoral laws. The disputed constituencies include Karaga, Savelugu, Bimbila and Tolon. Now joining us via Zoom to speak further on this development is the NDC Tolon Constituency Communications Officer in the person of Dr. Seidu Fita. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, sir. And first of all, just clarify and help us understand what concerns you have with regards to this process and the issues that you have with the declaration of Habibi Drisu as MP-elect. It looks like you're on mute. Can you kindly unmute yourself? Do kindly hold on, Dr. Fita. We'll re-engage you shortly here on News Tonight, and do stay with us as well. We will re-engage him and stay on this issue as well as bring you more news shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back to News Tonight here on GHOne TV. In some more news this evening, the National Democratic Congress in the northern region is challenging the outcome of parliamentary results in some constituencies. It's citing issues of overvoting and violations of electoral laws. These disputed constituencies include Karaga, Savelugu, Bimbila and Tolon. And joining us via Zoom to speak on this development is the NDC Tolon Constituency Communications Officer, Dr. Seidu Fitter. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining us here on News Tonight. Now, I believe you're unmuted now, and I was asking you earlier, first of all, what exact issues does the NDC have, specifically as it pertains to the declaration of Habibi Drisu as MP-elect?
Good evening to you and to our cherished viewers. Just like you mentioned earlier, we petitioned a lot of constituencies due to overvoting that we have witnessed in some of the constituencies at certain polling stations. And when you look at the numbers that the declared MPs elect came to Parliament with, and you look at the irregularities that are leaked across the polling stations, if those numbers are annulled or those polling stations are cancelled, the NDC members of Parliament or parliamentary candidates are going to be declared as winners of the constituencies. An example is the Gushegu constituency, where we have been able to detect overvoting in 23 polling stations across the constituency. And the difference between the parliamentary candidate of the NDC and that of the MP-elect on the side of the MPP is around 1,000 votes.
Right.
And when they are able to take up seriously the overvoting that took place in some of the polling stations and annul the polling stations or ballot boxes, the NDC parliamentary candidate is going to lead Tampuli by over 5,000 votes.
I see. Now, Dr. Fitter, I just also want you to hone specifically into issues with regards to Tolon constituency, of course, where you serve, and you were highlighting the concerns that the NDC has there. So if you can expand further on that.
When you come to the Tolon constituency in Chirifoyil, for example, we were able to detect many irregularities at the polling stations, overvoting, whereas you have more numbers in the ballot box as compared to the numbers we have in the biometric verification machine as those who participated in the election. And we have over 7 polling stations at Chirifoyil alone. And when you look at the numbers, it supersedes that of the numbers that are in the biometric verification machine. And that, sends a signal that there's a massive overvoting or voting irregularities in these polling stations. Now, history is what is waking us up to take this issue up in Chirifoyil. For example, in the last election where this thing took place, we have people who came to vote at the polling station on behalf of people who lost their life or who died before the election. Number 2, complaints came up before the election that in 2020, people were put under duress to allow the Electoral Commission and that of the MPP agents to add 12 ballots to the candidate of the MPP, who is currently the Member of Parliament for Tolon constituency, Habibi Drisu. And we thought that was going to change. And so this time around, we trained police station agents who are vigilant, who are competent, intelligent enough to detect all these problems. And after this election, looking through the election results, we have been able to detect that overvoting really took place in some of the polling stations in Chirifoyil. And similarly, the same problems took place in Gurmane, which is another place where in 2020 the NDC won, and the MPP was bent in taking back the polling stations in Gurmane. And the only way they could do that was just to come in and perpetrate these irregularities. And we are saying we will not allow it to slide. We want the law to take its course. The Electoral Commissioner, the interest she is showing in other constituencies where NDC parliamentary candidates won, we would expect her to show the same interest in Tolon, in Gushegu and other northern constituencies where we are very sure that when this overvoting is detected or they give processes for recollation to be done, the NDC is going to have majority of seats in the northern region as we expected before we went into the election.
So what's the next step going to be for the NDC as it pertains to this? Are you going to take legal action?
We have petitioned some of the constituencies which includes Toulon constituency, through the courts. And that is the process we think we need to follow, because we came into the election to win and lead people, and we are not in to cause mayhem. And we think that as a responsible political party, the best way we can go is to follow due processes. And mind you, in 2020, when Electoral Commission officers were under duress, declared elections in favor of the NPP and the Techman South election, respected members of the NDC, led by lawyer Adaudu and Collins Dauda, when they met the returning officer in Techman South, he directed them back to Accra. And when they met Jim Mensah, she told them the only way they can address these issues is to go to court and not to do recollation. And that was what denied us the Techman South results. So we took a cue from her advice to go to court so that we can follow due processes for them to do recollation or annul some of these polling stations where the irregularities took place, so that our parliamentary candidates, who we believe are the MPs elect for their respective constituencies, to go and represent us in the August Parliament. But we are surprised that today the Electoral Commissioner is showing only interest in parliamentary candidates or elect constituencies where the NDC parliamentary candidates were declared. If that same interest is shown in the northern region, trust me, we are going to have majority going to Parliament to represent the NDC.
We'd have to round it up here. Dr. Seydou Feta, thank you for joining us. Certainly more subsequently. He serves as the Communications Officer for the Toulon constituency. That's with the NDC specifically. Now, you're watching News Tonight here on GHOne TV. Stay with us. We've got business news shortly. Business news tonight. The majority in Parliament has accused the minority MPs of disrupting government business on the floor following the absence of Finance Minister Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam in the House to present the 2025 mini-budget. The NPP MPs argue the government's inability to get the expenditure in advance of appropriation is laid as a result of the disruptive behaviours of the NDC MPs. Now, the majority has wanted a trade of the passage of the mini-budget with approval of 2 Supreme Court nominees, tax waivers and passage of the free SHS bill. The minority, however, insisted that the House attend to only the mini-budget and a few other bills.
To adjourn the sittings of this meeting till the 2nd of January 2025. Honourable members, the sittings of this meeting have been adjourned to the 2nd of January 2025. It is so declared.
Now, this development means that Ghana will, for the first time, record a government shutdown where the 2024 Appropriation Act expires by December 31 without a new one. Speaking to the media after proceedings, Minority Leader Dr. Kaysel Atto-Forson assured the Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opoku Agyeman, will present the mini-budget immediately after swearing in on January 7. Dr. Forson accused government of failing to respect Article 80 of the Constitution.
NPP government has failed to comply with Article 180 of the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana to present the expenditure in advance of appropriation. In the spirit of good transition, it is expected that the outgoing president, acting pursuant to Article 180 of the Constitution, would have acted in good faith and bring before this Parliament a proposal for expenditure to cater for the first quarter of the year 2025. This was very important because the Appropriation Act for 2025 will come into force on will not come into force on 1st of January 2025. Sadly, President Akufo-Addo planned to leave the public service uncatered for in the first quarter of the year 2025. However, let me give assurance to the people of Ghana and all stakeholders that the NDC government that will take office on the 7th of January 2025 will act with dispatch to cater for expenditure for the first quarter of the year 2025. There's no cause for alarm, ladies and gentlemen. Even though there will be no finance minister on the 7th of January 2025, the Vice President can present to this House the expenditure in advance of appropriation anytime after swearing in on the 7th of January 2025. And this House will be properly constituted to expedite the approval of the same expenditure in advance of appropriation.
Dr. Casey Alato-Forson, they're accusing the government of failing to adhere to Article 180 of the Constitution. Now, Ibrahim Al-Hassan, our parliamentary affairs correspondent, is in studio to run us through really the implications of this. Ibrahim, first of all, what were the events during the day in Parliament and the implications of what we just heard?
Well, Natalie, we've been looking forward to today, the finance minister appearing in Parliament
Certainly.
and then kickstarting the process towards the approval of the expenditure in advance of appropriation. This happens every election year because of the uncertainty as to who is the finance minister, which government is going to lead the charge a year after the election. True to it, per Article 180, as you mentioned, the finance minister was supposed to have done this in November. And of course, because there is what you call the Appropriation Act in force, that was approved early this year after the presentation of the budget, it will lapse after the end of this year, and that's 31st December. Once that happens, the president cannot spend even a penny from the consolidated fund without the proper legal mandate from Parliament. And that's why every year budget is sent to Parliament for approval. Now, with President Akufo-Addo leaving office on January 7, it suffices to say that right after December 31st, he cannot spend from the consolidated fund. And so, therefore, the argument about payment of salaries will come in. The argument about where he's even going to get money to run the affairs of the state will come in. The president is expected to show up in Parliament on January 3 to present his final State of the Nation address. Even that, probably the amount of money needed for the printing of his speech will be a challenge because this has not happened. The expenditure in advance of appropriation has not been approved. Now, so the finance minister has decided not to show up, and there's a reason. The Speaker indicated that there are a number of controversial issues on the table for Parliament to attend to before the 8th Parliament expires. Free Teachers Bill, tax waivers, approval of 2 Supreme Court Justice nominees, among many others. Because there is no consensus between the two parties, NDC and PP, he would not touch any of these controversial matters. However, the expenditure in advance of appropriation, the Ghana Boundaries Bill, the Environmental Protection Authority Bill, and some other 2 bills in Parliament. One of them is seeking to ensure that the Speaker is elected a day ahead of the swearing of the president. So what happens in 2020, for instance, doesn't repeat itself, where the president was ready to be sworn in, but then all eyes was on Parliament to get a speaker.
So you can have a speaker.
Exactly. And so these bills were quite essential, and then there was consensus from both sides. The majority side said, no, government has its own agenda. Government has its own business. Let's table those businesses and let the House, as properly so constituted, attend to those businesses. I talk about the tax waivers, among many other bills. And so, because the minority said no to these requests from the majority, the majority also decided to keep the finance minister away from the chamber. And that's exactly what happened today, regardless of the fact that yesterday there was a promise that indeed the finance minister will appear today. You asked about the implications.
Yes.
So, if the incoming administration isn't able to get this expenditure in advance of appropriation approved before the end of January, workers will not receive their salaries.
Those are very dire implications.
Most definitely. And what you call shutdown, which is quite common in the US. For the first time, it's going to happen in Ghana, where the governance machinery will grind to a halt because the liquidity to have it running will not be there.
Is there likely to be a recall of Parliament, or it's not?
Yes, in fact, as the Kwame Nkrumah, the majority leader, indicates that they disagree with the Speaker's decision to adjourn until January 2nd, and that if Speaker changes his mind to even tomorrow to recall Parliament, he and his charges will be there to attend to the business of getting this expenditure in advance of appropriation approved. And so that indication has been given by the majority. Nonetheless, the minority says, you can go. When we come, immediately we are sworn in as properly so constituted government of the NDC administration. We will do the needful and then put together this expenditure in advance of appropriation, and it will be presented by the Vice President, which is allowed. The Vice President, whenever he or she appears in Parliament, has the same powers as members of Parliament. The only thing that they are unable to do is to partake in the voting process in Parliament. And so, yes, that will be done. But the challenge will be knowing exactly what is involved, what do the books say, what are the shortfalls.
It doesn't entirely solve the problem.
It doesn't, but of course, you have an approval, so then it will be up to the new administration, the John Mahama administration, to go look for money to fulfill these obligations.
Very interesting times in Parliament. Ibrahim Al-Hassan, thank you so much for that detailed explanation. You're watching News Tonight here on GH1 TV. Stay with us, more news shortly. It's now time where we bring you the sports updates with Benjamin Yamwa, who's in studio. Benjamin?
Thank you very much. Of course, in sports, the Black Galaxy's head coach, Masoud Dramani, has named his final squad for Ghana's African Nations Championship CHAN qualifier against Nigeria. 26-man squad includes Black Stars quartet of Isaac Afol of course, his team, Razak Simpson, Ebenezer Aban, and Jerry Efriye, House of Folk Centre back. Now let's go on to the fixtures. Even though it's Christmas, there are games in the Ghana Premier League for this particular weekend. It's been termed as the special Bronya fixtures or footy action for this particular weekend. As we speak currently, the first game, which involved the Phobians, currently is ongoing at the GHOne Stadium. They are leading 1-0 against Brecum Chelsea. From the weekend, Saturday and of course Sunday, the other fixtures for the GPL will be played. There you have them. Dreams FC take on Kotoko in a big game out there at the Tuba Astro Turf. We have Nations FC against Legon Cities FC, also a big fixture this weekend in the GPL. Bechem take on Samatex, who are defending champions in the GPL, while the table toppers, Heart of Lions, take on Basake Holy Stars. We have got in the Gold Stars in action against in Swatreman United. We've got Young Apostles playing at home in, of course, not of Ghana. I mean, as you go up there against Vision FC at Wenchi. Adriana Stars also play against Accra Lions, and then of course Mediema SC in the last game for the weekend will be in action as they play against Karela in the Ghana Premier League fixtures. That has been termed as the Bronya Agro Special for the fixtures in the GPL for this weekend. That's how we wrap sports today up on the scores, the news. Back to you, Natalie, for the rest of the bulletin.
Thank you, Benjamin. Well, next we bring you international news. More than 40 million people are now struggling to feed themselves across West and Central Africa, with that number set to rise to 52 million by the middle of next year. That's according to United Nations Food Agency. According to a new report released on Friday, the World Food Programme said 3.4 million people are currently facing emergency levels of hunger in the region, representing a 70% increase in such cases since the summer. The report said conflicts, displacement, economic instability, and severe climate shocks are driving food insecurity. The ongoing conflict in the Sahel, as well as the Sudanese civil war, has forcibly displaced over 10 million people across the region. Massive flooding in Nigeria and Chad earlier this year have made the situation acute. Well, we've got a lot more international and local news available on our website, starfm.com.gh. And that wraps up News Tonight this evening. Thank you so much for making the time. It was produced by Abdul Hanan Adam. I'm Natalie Fort. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful evening.